The City of Sulphur Springs proclamation recognizing the accomplishments of Judy Moore. Whereas Judy Moore has many amazing accomplishments, and we really do not want to lose her to San Antonio, but we know she will be incredible wherever she's located. And whereas she introduced the shopping program where clients were able to come in and select foods that suited their family and individual needs. And whereas she introduced produce into the program and helped the PAN program for seniors to allow them to get additional food aside from their normal distribution. And whereas she partnered with TXU, FEC, and Reliant to provide managed funds to the community chest to assist with clients' bills without depleting the general fund. And whereas she created Reach Out program so clients without the ability to travel to the food bank could meet monthly to receive food close to their homes. And whereas Judy was responsible for creating a database for clients so services could be maintained and updated with every visit to ensure fairness and consistency. And whereas she partnered with NTFB and the local schools to facilitate a program for students to receive additional meals to take home if they were struggling with hunger. And whereas she partnered with local schools, businesses, and organizations every year to facilitate multiple food drives and partnered with local churches to facilitate the Thanksgiving boxes, and with over 1,000 given out last year. And whereas she partnered with MET to provide employment for seniors looking to get back in the workforce, and with MHMR to provide employment for clients. And whereas she has provided free notary services, partnered with local business to provide vouchers for clients in need of services, remodeled their facility by partnering with Lowe's, worked yearly with the United Way, and started the yearly health fair, and made sure the community was aware of the programs they offered. Now therefore I, John A. Sellers, Mayor of the City of Sulphur Springs, do deem it an honor to recognize Judy for all her accomplishments. So proclaim the second day of March 2021. Thank you, Judy, for your service.
Awesome.
Give you this signed certificate, and then I can give you some copies too.
Awesome, thank you.
And thank you so much.
Thank you, Judy.
My privilege.
Take the glasses off. People won't recognize the glasses. All right. Thank you.
Like I said last night at that little going away party they had for me, this is home for me. My roots have grown. So you'll see me again because I'm coming back.
Well, good.
And the job at the community chest has been and is the best job in Hopkins County. It really is. I mean, where else can you get paid to help people?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, I can see
and
that.
at the same time, it's the worst because we can't offer as much as we would like to.
Yeah.
I've never seen a community like this. All of the other agencies, instead of competing for resources, Can't Help, myself, others are
Right.
Heart of Hope, all the others. We don't compete. We complement one another, and we're on the phone with each other every day. I can only do this. What can you do? And we merge it with the churches. A couple of churches get in on that. They have a $1,000 need, and I only do 150. By a few phone calls, we can get it.
Wow.
I've never seen a community like this where people, when we talk about helping neighbors, this community really looks at it that way. And that has been a joy, absolute joy. Thank you.
Thank you.
You see why I love this place? No, I started out as an adult. My children were before I joined the military. I joined the military in 1972 out of Dodge City, Kansas, into the old Women's Army Corps. At the time, we were not part of the regular Army. We only had one battalion of females down in Fort McClellan, Alabama. And the military, the standard military, wasn't sure what to do with women at that point. It wasn't until 1974 that we transitioned from the Women's Army Corps into the regular Army. I was field first sergeant, and I remember the first formation we had co-ed with both women and men, and they were calling roll call. And here's these deep voices which we weren't used to hearing, and they were listening to squeaky voices that they weren't. So, I mean, there was some transition. My first meritorious service medal, in fact, was won there because when I came in, women were not allowed to touch weapons. We were not allowed to go to the field. They loaned us a set of BDUs so we could spend one night in the field. It was a very different world then. And now, in '74, they decided that we had to qualify before we could stay in the military as we're transitioning into the regular Army. And so I took all the doctors and nurses out to the firing range and qualified them with weapons, people who had never touched a weapon. I'm from Kansas. I was born and raised in Kansas. We had been around weapons, but most of them had not. And it was kind of funny because I didn't feel like I earned the medal. There was a female doctor in the foxhole area, and she was firing, and she flipped it from semi-automatic to automatic and started firing. And she was looking for me because I'm running the range. So she's looking, and I dive bombed her to stop her, and they thought I had done something miraculous. I was just keeping her from shooting me because I'm the one she was looking for. Fort Riley, Kansas was my first duty assignment. I went to Germany, to Frankfurt, Germany in '79. Yeah, I think so, '79. To Frankfurt. Was working in a hospital in Frankfurt that was built to Hitler's specification. It was one of his premier hospitals. You could turn the corner and see these gorgeous marble, pictures of men on horses and all this other stuff. Because I'm into history, I found it interesting how they put the patients in the hospital, depending on whether the government, you were on the good side of the government, which level you went on. Americans weren't rating too high. They were probably in the attic if they were ever at the hospital. But different countries were brought into that hospital as patients. Stayed there. Again, my kids have traveled with me always. She started kindergarten in Frankfurt, 1976. Came home, went to Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio, and initially I was an instructor, the adjunct professor at the Academy of Health Sciences, which is, Fort Sam Houston is like the home of the Army Medical Department. And the premier school is the Academy of Health Sciences. I was the first female to ever be assigned to Military Science Division, because that was an area that just, that was a male-dominated area. Military sciences include escape and evasion, search and rescue in hostile areas, and areas that women, by and large, were not typically trained in. And I became a teacher there, and worked there for a number of years. In fact, they had a 90-minute special about the Combat Casualty Care Course, which we do at Camp Bullis, just north of town. And we take doctors and these traditional medical people out. And I had some Marines running, protection. And I had already taken the entire course and booby-trapped it. And so anyhow, this squad of medical people are going in to get people at a search and rescue for a downed helicopter behind enemy lines. And I had it all rigged up, and they got blown up without saying too much. But that was such a new thing, first the Combat Casualty Care Course, because medical personnel will take the most direct route to a patient and then just flip them over and want to treat them. And most often they were booby-trapped, and I guarantee you the ones I put there were booby-trapped. And 90 Minutes got a hold of it, and they did a special, not only on the newness of the Combat Casualty Care Course, but me as the first female ever assigned to that division. A lot of things like that. I mean, the military, if you're willing to step forward, take bravely, just say, of course I can do it. I haven't done it, but I bet I can learn. You can pretty much do anything you want to do within the Army. Went back to Europe, Heidelberg, worked for the United States Army Europe commander, the surgeon, and we were responsible for medical support packages for the entire European theater. We had palletized medical units, triage units that we could airdrop anywhere in Europe, and had a lot of interesting times because I worked in the war room. We had to have a medical support package that supported every contingency of all our top secret plans. I had to have a medical. We worked in an open top secret vault. You got to understand that in my first tour in Frankfurt, they were blowing up industrialists in the area behind my children's home. The Miter Bahnhof gang was blowing everybody up. They blew up the NCO club in Frankfurt, in Berlin. It was troubling times. It was during the time of the Achille Laurel, the ship that was out in the Mediterranean, and they took a man in a wheelchair and rolled him off. When they took hijacked an aircraft, and the Navy diver was thrown on the tarmac. We were there for all of those events because we had a medical support package for that kind of event. It was interesting. It was intense. I wouldn't trade one of those days. I learned so much from some highly talented people. I don't know that I would give them another day in that scenario, but it was really eye-opening. The number of times our country is in peril and we don't know it. Interesting anyhow. So I went back to Fort Sam after Heidelberg, and again taught at the academy for a short period of time, and then I went over and became the first sergeant of a unit. I was promoted to sergeant major, which is the highest grade that enlisted can have. When I was promoted as E9 sergeant major, there was me and 26 other females total in the entire United States Army that had attained that rank. I was sent from there to I actually retired from Fort Hood, working for the Third Corps Surgeon's Office, again traveling and responsible for medical support within a huge state area. I was glad when I retired because I was going to go home. I had a brand new granddaughter, my first and only grandchild. So I was able to be with her for her early months of life, and that was awesome. I retired in '93, April of '93, and went back to school because I physically could not do, because I am 80% disabled, VA disabled. I can't do all that I could do then. Not to say I'm an invalid, but I couldn't do the same thing. And I went back to school, and I got an undergraduate and graduate degree in computer science there in San Antonio. And then I started working, actually when I was in my master's program, I started working with the Air Force, and my job was to handle all the communication budgets and disbursement of funds and the plans for expansion. So that would include all the computers on a base. It would include the fiber optics on the ground. That would include air traffic control, avionics in the aircrafts. And I did it then for 11 military bases, Air Force bases. Routinely, I was up at the Pentagon once a month in budget meetings. We would all, we're fighting for our budgets, for our programs. So I was up there quite a bit, sometimes more frequently than that. I was, in fact, supposed to be up there when the plane hit the Pentagon. And we had a young lady who had just came to work for us. And I didn't stay in the hotel room when I went to DC. I got out I had to see everything. I had to go see the Holocaust Museum, which is awesome. I was tired. The trip had been, it's a frequent trip and it gets old. And anyhow, I talked Tammy, who was a new young lady, into going for me. And I had her all prepped up ready for the thing. And because I'm retired Army at this point, I cut through the Army area. Everybody stays in their own area, Air Force and Army. I cut through the Army place, and I told her how to go to get down to the cafeteria during breaks and beat the crowd. And she followed my advice and was in the Army section, which was under renovation when the plane hit, and it hit the Army section. She survived it. We didn't know she was alive for, I think it was like 10 o'clock that night before even her family knew. I always felt a little guilty, not because I didn't drive that plane in there, but it should have been me. I should have been there. Tammy is someone I'll always remember. You know, I've met so many memorable people. My oldest son was, he was with the 24th Infantry Division going into Iraq for the original freedom for the Kuwaiti people. And it got to the point that I thought my other children who were still at home and in school and high school, and it was enough. So I had decided I wasn't going to do that.
How in the world did you end up in Sulphur Springs?
I'm sorry?
How in the world did you end up in Sulphur Springs?
How did I end up in Sulphur Springs? Well, let me add one more thing. So then the Marine Corps offered me a job as the Director of Communication for Marine Air Station Yuma and the 2 million acres of training ground, live training ground that they had. And then I retired from the Marine Corps in '09 and came home. I bought my house in San Antonio, actually in Tyra, in '05. I was still in the Marine Corps at the time as a civilian employee. And my ex-husband had gone through school over in Commerce, and he's a preacher. And his first preaching was done in Sulphur Springs. And we're thinking about retiring, and it's like, okay, where do we want to go retire? I didn't care as long as it was Texas. He loved this area from his experience decades earlier. And I said, fine. So we bought the house in '05, pending our, waiting for our retirement in '09. And so we came home in '09. We ended up divorced, but I stayed. He's back in Indiana. I have never experienced a community like this. My minister at First Methodist was speaking, and I think he explained something I had trouble explaining. I have never lived anywhere in my life, to include my childhood, as long as I've lived in Sulphur Springs. And then they give me this house and this land and this shop that I can be a hoarder real comfortably. And in the military, every 18 months you're moving, you can't hoard. I loved it. I love the people of this town, and they've just demonstrated to me what America is about, honestly. Before my house burnt last year, and this community came out in force. I didn't, and like I said, the only thing worse than having your house burned to the ground is having it happen in a pandemic. The only thing open was Walmart. Praise God for Walmart, because I think somebody came by the hotel and threw some clothes at me. They not only showed up then, but they've showed up each and every time I've needed them. In my own life and in my professional life here in town, I worked several places. I was a dispatcher for the fire and sheriff's office over in Cooper for a while. Then I went to work for a lawyer in Greenville, and probably I loved the work, but she wanted me to build a career, and I'm really just wanting a job right now. And then on a fluke, the day I heard about an opening down at the community chest was the day I turned in my resume, and I was working 2 days later. I had my daughter last night at a going away party coined actually the full circle, because I was hungry as a child, and now I'm in a position to help those who are hungry. And I've never been in a community where people don't compete for resources, they work together. All you have to do is have a bona fide need and work together. All these agencies, businesses, every business in town I've probably dealt with once or twice, because we had someone who was needy, and not only needy, but was trying very hard to do all they could do. They just needed a helping hand. And this community has came out in full force each and every time.
We know you've done that for us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For all you've done.
Appreciate you. I'm going to miss it, but I'm going to come back. I refuse to say goodbye to my friends.